I promised some of my users in the forums that I would make a video on how to use Joomla language overrides. Now I'm going to gear this more towards my extensions, but this is useful in many extensions. Most developers now are creating modules and plugins and components that use the Joomla translation system. So this will apply to most extensions. Now there are some things that developers can do that might make one extension vary a little from another, and I'm going to use my ePrivacy Directive extension as an example of a way that a user might stray from the norm. So let's go and start with exactly how the Joomla translation system works. So your browser, when you arrive at a website, your browser sends information to the website. If you have cookies for that website, the cookie data is sent. Your browser sends information about itself, what its capabilities are. It sends, IP addresses. It sends all kinds of stuff. And you can look at what it sends by looking at the request headers. Oops. I meant to drag this thing up a little bit here. If we look at the request headers, we can see that we send and accept. It's what the browser is capable of looking at. We send accept encoding, and we send accept language. Right here. My browser is telling this website that I am capable of receiving English language content. So Joomla receives this information and uses it to select which language files it's going to load. So what that looks like from an extension developer perspective is, let me bring up a window here. If we are looking at an extension that gets installed, let's say it's a plugin. If we were to go look at its extension XML file, I'm going to go to ePrivacy since that's the one that I'm kind of talking about. If we look at its extension file, sorry, I need to add a new window to my thing here, otherwise you're not going to see what I'm doing. Here we go. If we look at the extension file itself, we can see that this extension installs 2 language files. Now, plugins by default install their language files into the administrator folder. However, they can, in modern versions of Joomla, also have a front-end language folder too. But I'm used to working with plugins in the back end, so I put all my languages for that in the administrator language file, and everything works fine. So that's one of the examples of ways that two developers might vary in their implementation of language. But the one thing that we all have in common is if we have implemented language files, we are going to have these language files defined within the installer XML file, and this is what their names are. Now, I only include English because I only speak English, and I don't want to force my Google Translate version of someone's language into these extensions and make it bad. Yeah, I'd much rather you take a look at the English version and translate it appropriately to your language or your dialect of your language. So, anyway, this particular extension only installs one set of language files. And like I said, most plugins install to the administrator area, but the installer file will tell you where it's being installed. It will say site if there's a language file that's specifically made for site. So the browser interacts with the language file that matches the language that the browser pardon me, the browser sends its language, and Joomla loads the correct language file based on what the browser has sent, if it's available, and otherwise it falls back to the default language for the website. So now that you've got that, the way that translations work is, where's it at? Within Joomla. And again, I'm working off of this one plugin, so there's the administrator language, and then there's the front end language. So we're going to go into administrator and language and ENGB, and here we go with all the language files that were installed for this website. This is just on my sandbox server. If you're watching any of my other videos, the sandbox server is always where I do my demos. So. And here are the two language files that were installed by that installer XML that I just showed you. So now if I wanted to translate, I would copy this one. The system file, the system translation you can generally ignore. This contains, what happened? I scrolled, I didn't mean to scroll. This one contains, bring the editor back up here. The system translation file only contains the menu item, and this is for the extension manager. So there's only 2 lines in the system translation file, so you generally don't have to worry about that one. But you've got the main extension translation file, which I'll go ahead and open that one here so you can see what it looks like. And translation files are they are comments. Oops, not what I wanted. They are comments. Any line that begins with a semicolon. And then they are the actual translation strings. Now this portion that is at the head of the line, which is in all caps and not surrounded by quotes, this is known as the language constant. And this portion to the right of the equal sign that is surrounded in quotes is known as the translation string. So it's the constant and the string, or the constant and the value. This is basically a super simple key-value pair document. So this would be the key and this would be the value. And as a developer, this super helps when I'm writing code, because I don't have to fill in this value and then do some weird programming thing to go grab the different value for a different language. All I have to do is tell the system I want to display plug sys ePrivacy not message type. And then it goes to the language file and finds this string and loads this value from whatever language file it is. So I mean, if it's Spanish, then it's going to load whatever is in quotes over here. So let's address something that is a pitfall for a lot of new people who are not familiar with how Joomla works or how the translation system works. I would not want to edit this file directly. Now, I mean, if I was creating a new translation file, if I was, for example, making a Spanish version, I would copy this into a different place, and that's the next thing I'm going to cover about. I would copy this into a different place, I would change its name, and then I would edit this document directly. But I would not want to edit the original language file, the one that comes with the extension when I installed it. And the reason for this is that these language files are overwritten whenever you receive a software upgrade. So say I release a new version of ePrivacy and you changed, I'm going to scroll down here to something that's relevant here. So you changed, we're going to do this in the front end, pardon me, in a language override later. But if you were to change this, it's not privacy, it's protection, isn't it? If you were to change this to EU Privacy Directive General Data Protection Regulation, and then save it, and then at a later time you receive a software upgrade from me, you know, I push out new versions of this all the time. Anytime someone reports a bug, I try to have a fix within 24 hours. The next time you get an update for this software, it's going to go right back to this, because the language file gets overwritten on software upgrades. So resist the urge to edit the translation files that come with your extensions that you download. So I'm going to close this and discard changes. We're going to put that away, and we're going to put... No, we're not. We're going to leave that one open for now. So back to the translation files. Say I was going to translate this to Spanish. I would copy this, and I would go into the language folder that I want to translate to, and I would paste it in there. And I already had done this on a previous attempt at a video, and a baby started crying. My granddaughter started crying, so I had to stop and go take care of that. But here in the new language file, because this file did not come with the extension, you can edit this one all you want. That's what this is for. And when you're editing for this particular extension, for anybody who's watching this for specific instruction on how to do EU privacy, all of the strings for the JavaScript display method, the sorry, I had to bring the translation file up here. All the strings for the JavaScript translation method, for the JavaScript confirm method, the modal, the ribbon, the message box, and the module. They all pull from the same. I wanted to make this easy, so when I wrote this, I put all the translations for what a user will see. I put them all in the system plugin. That way, you don't have to worry about editing any of 3 or 4 translation files to try to figure out which one you really need to use. I wrote it so that all of the display methods pull their translations from the same place. So you could edit this in one place and then start experimenting with how you want to display it, So if you're doing ePrivacy and you're watching this video to figure out how to do ePrivacy, all of the translation strings for a user, what a user will see, are in the system plugin translation file. And at the bottom, you'll see this part that says strings displayed in the front end. This is everything that a user might see. Everything is right here. So, assuming that you've created all of your language files and you want to edit the language file that came with the extension. I just explained why you would not want to do that, because when you get upgrades, you lose them. You lose those changes. So that is where Joomla has provided you with a tool. Now there's another way to do this for those of you who want to make a whole ton of updates. But in the extensions menu under language overrides, you can search for and replace existing translations without having to worry about losing them on software upgrades. So something you can do, so say the translations you want to change are only for the front end, or maybe they're for the back end, or maybe they're for both. You're going to choose that over here, filter by site. You're going to create a new override. And then at this point, if you know the constant, you can just paste it here and type your new value down here. Or you can use Joomla to search for it. So I'm going to search for it, and then we're going to look at the translation file and see which one it really is. So I want to change that value that we saw earlier. So what I'm doing is I'm searching for the value, the translated string, in order to find the constant. So mod ePrivacy, mod ePrivacy, mod ePrivacy, mod ePrivacy. So this is all nothing that's going to help me here. So what I do is I go back to the original translation file, and I want to change the message title. This is what shows up at the top of the modal window. It also shows up at the top of the module. It shows up in as part of the system message. It's used all over the place. But that particular string that I'm looking for is plug sys ePrivacy message title. So I'm going to copy that and go back in here to, okay, now I want it to say EU ePrivacy Directive I heard someone say data privacy at one point and it just sticks with me. I can't shake it. So at this point I'm telling the system that anytime that it's going to use this language constant, that I want it to replace the value with this string for the English language. Okay, so let me save that, and then yeah, I'm going to go ahead and just reload here. I'm going to lose my connection in the back end again. There we go. So this is applicable to just about everything within Joomla. Anytime you see a piece of text, that is generally being placed there by a class called JText. And as a developer, I use JText all the time. Anytime I'm going to show any text to a user, I use JText. Anytime. Every time. And the reason is exactly for this, so that as a site owner, as an end user, you can replace the text that I put in there, because you know my terminology might not meet the way that you're using the extension. So let's look at this website uses cookies to manage authentication, blah 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 blah. Let's bring up Kate again and figure it out. That's the ePrivacy message. We'll copy that. And we're going to create a new ePrivacy message. Okay. Now, by default, I'm going to go ahead and paste the default text in here so that I can modify it here. This website uses cookies to manage authentication, which is true. Navigation, not entirely true. To manage authentication for analytics. And other functions by using our website. You agree, blah 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 blah. No, you see, that's not it. To fully use our website, you agree. You must agree. There we go. Maybe that's better for the way that you want your message to be displayed. So the idea is that you can slightly tweak these things, or you can massively tweak them to decide, what your users should be seeing here. Uses cookies to manage authentication for analytics and other functions. There we go. So that's kind of a overview of how the language system works, about how you can translate and manipulate language files. There's another method. Let me bring up, put that away. There's another method. Wherever you see the language folders, you're going to see an overrides folder here. And you can create a language override, and you can edit these directly. I opened the wrong editor. Hold on. Kate here. I'll bring Kate back. So as you can see here, this language file is, you know what, I'm going to open up a different one. We've been making language overrides for the front end. So when you do it in the override manager, it creates that in the database. You can also do it here in this language file, in this language override. So this is an override for the entire ENGB language. You can create one of these for any language that you're using on your system, and this will override what the developer has sent with the language files. This will also override what you have created for your own translations. So keep that in mind. And that's about it. That's it's about all that you get from the language system. I mean, I didn't cover usage of JText. That's more of a developer thing. But as far as a site owner or site administrator who's not a developer, this is how you would be able to manage translations within your site, slightly alter things if they don't, fully fit your description, your model. So that's that. I hope this helps, and come to my website and get some of my extensions, even the free ones.